the radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show. On this Friday, August 8th, it's late over here. It's 10 p.m. Kind of, it's late. To all you Europeans, hopefully some of you are staying up to watch the show. I'm doing this from Europe for you. No, I'm kidding. No, actually this time is chosen for the Americans among you, so hopefully we get a good turnout among American viewers. So I hope everybody's having a great week and looking forward to the weekend. All right, we are going to cover a number of different topics today, and of course, I look forward to your questions. Remember, the questions are a way for you to dictate kind of the topics that we cover on the show. I answer all the questions, so use the super chat and engage and support the show, and yeah, you know, the show will go as long as you ask questions for. The show will probably be pretty short from the news perspective tonight, just because it's late. It's late over here. Yeah. All right, let's start. The Trump administration seems to be interested in privatizing Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Now, I know this is technical stuff. Some of you might be, yeah, who cares? What difference does it make? It makes a huge difference. Freddie and Fannie have been in conservatorship by the federal government, whatever that means, basically owned by the federal government since 2008. These are the mortgage institutions that more than anything were responsible for the financial crisis. The financial crisis was pretty brutal. It, to a large extent, changed the political landscape in America. It changed people's attitude towards capitalism and the economy and I think the world more broadly. And Freddie and Fannie were at the heart of it. They basically went bankrupt on massive scale. And instead of using that bankruptcy as an opportunity to unwind them and to get rid of them, instead, the government saved them and put them under receivership or conservatorship. And for years and years and years, and we've talked about this on previous shows, there was talk about, well, we need to break them up, we need to do away with them, we need to privatize them, we need to do something with them. And it's been, 17 years and nothing has happened. We went through a whole Trump administration, Obama administration, a Trump administration, a Biden administration, and now Trump has inherited this. And the latest is that the administration is considering privatizing Freddie and Fannie, and maybe even combining the two and privatizing them as one entity. Privatizing really means selling shares, selling stock in the companies, and using the revenue from the sale of a stock, which could be many billions of dollars, I guess, to reduce the debt or to fund the government or do something like that. Right? But Freddie and Fannie, so let's do a little bit of history, right? Fannie Mae was created during the FDR administration, and basically to help fund mortgages, to help promote mortgages. It was created as a, quote, private organization, private business, but with direct government links and direct government control. Purpose was to buy mortgages that banks issued. In those days, there was SNL, Saving Loans Organization, and they would buy them. And over the years, they would buy them and then repackage them and sell them to investors. And Freddie and Fannie basically determined interest rates in the mortgage business, or Fannie did in those days, by determining at what prices they were willing to buy the mortgages. That filtered out to the banks, and then the banks determined how much how much interest to charge, the homeowners. The whole purpose of Fannie was to make mortgages cheap, make it easy for Americans to own their homes. Freddie Mac was then added to Fannie in the 1960s and also was created as a supposedly private organization. Now here's the thing. Freddie and Fannie were both entities that had what we call an implicit government guarantee. That is, there's nothing in their documents, there's nothing in the law that says that the US government is going to bail them out. But everybody knows that they will be bailed out. That when they get into trouble, the government will step in and pay off all their debts. So Freddie and Fannie can borrow money at very low rates. Why? Because it's risk-free. So they basically are a pseudo-private entity that can raise money, i.e. borrow money, issue bonds, at the same interest rates as the US government, because it's the US government guaranteeing their debt. As a consequence, they can then turn around and buy mortgages at interest rates, at valuations higher than would otherwise be appropriate. They can outcompete private organizations like, Goldman Sachs and other banks, and keep interest rates low for you and me. They also tend to set, for the banks, they basically, by implication, they tend to determine the level of riskiness that the banks are willing to issue mortgages. Since they've got a government guarantee, they don't care how risky the loans are. They'll buy anything pretty much. So in the early 2000s, when you were getting zero down loans, variable rate interest rates at very, very low rates, you were getting, almost no income verification. When you were getting all these irresponsible loans, it's not the bank's fault. The banks knew that every loan that they made, they could turn around and sell to Freddie and Fannie. And then Freddie and Fannie would repackage them and sell them to insurance companies and other kind of institutional investors. But Freddie and Fannie were at the heart of this. Indeed, in the early 2000s, I think it was Fannie Mae, couldn't even produce financials, income statement, balance sheet, that were audited. The auditors could not figure out, what these entities were actually doing and where the money was all going. Indeed, Freddie and Fannie spent quite a bit of money on lobbying Congress. They had a number of senators and House members in their pockets. And it's the mortgages that they incentivize people to take, which are one of the biggest causes of the financial crisis. These were government entities, basically, with government guarantees, functioning, working, and perverting and distorting a private market. They're massive. We're talking about trillions of dollars because the reality is that almost today, in particular, almost all mortgages are issued through Freddie and Fannie. They buy, I think, over 90% of all the mortgages issued out there. And basically, every time you get a mortgage, you think you're getting it from a bank, but ultimately that mortgage lands up in the balance sheet of Freddie and Fannie. All right, so instead of what should be done is Freddie and Fannie should be dissolved, should be broken up. The assets should be sold, the liability should be paid off, and they should just disappear, right? And let private markets, banks, buy mortgages, repackage mortgages, let a private market develop with no government guarantees, That would make interest rates on mortgages real in the sense of reflecting market realities, not government guaranteed subsidies. What you want is to create a robust market that is safe and non-systemic. If a bank issues bad mortgages or buys bad mortgages and can't pay them out, it will fail. That won't bring down the US economy. That won't create a financial crisis. Freddie and Fannie today are so big, are so large, are interwound with almost every loan, every mortgage that's out there. Right now, the two companies support around 70% of the mortgages. That when they fail, when they screw up, when they provide the wrong incentives, and they have to, given their subsidy, it's just the incentives are lined up for them to take on huge risks. They don't bear the downside, and yet their executives are going to get paid nice, handsome rewards for benefiting on the upside. And they are going to create a crisis in the future. There's no question about it. I mean, I think Peter Schiff is right when he writes today on Twitter, of all the economic mistakes Trump has made, privatizing Freddie and Fannie with government guarantees would be the biggest. Other than rewarding his donors who bought cheap shares, this move will be another disaster for the US economy. We don't need more crony capitalism. And he continues later on and he says, we need to get government out of the mortgage finance business, especially if the mortgages are sold or insured by private companies, but with government guarantees or backstops. This arrangement played a major role in causing the 2008 financial crisis. Absolutely. He adds, which I predicted. So, yeah. This is just another one of these. So let me be clear here, because maybe I didn't say this. Not only is he saying that these Freddie and Fannie would be privatized, but he is saying explicitly that he expects the implicit guarantee to continue. Now, why not make the guarantee explicit? Well, that would take an act of Congress. That would mean a change of law. I don't think that'll pass. I don't think people would go for it. But implicit, I never admitted it, but when the time comes, I'm going to bail them out. And everybody knows it, so their bonds are priced based on a bailout. This is Donald Trump. This is the kind of world he's creating. Again, what Freddie and Fannie need is, maybe they could be privatized without a guarantee, but they're so big, I can't imagine the government would not guarantee their liabilities given the size, the sheer size of Freddie and Fannie. What they really need to do is sell them off, break them up completely. Or an alternative would be to break them up into 5, 6, 7 companies, split up their assets, maybe make them regional, I don't know. Privatize them, withdraw all guarantees, implicit and explicit, and let them compete with investment banks that do a very similar business. And again, bring sanity, in other words, bring market discipline to the mortgage market and to the mortgage resale market, if you will. All right, so that is Freddie and Fannie, and there's a lot going on in the finance world right now. So the top 3 stories we're going to talk about today are from the finance world, because I think it's crucial and interesting what this administration is doing. And of course, one of the things that they're doing is there's a lot of pressure on the Federal Reserve to lower interest rates. And a lot of discussion right now about who will be the next Fed chairman. Clearly, Powell's term will not be renewed. President Trump is unhappy with Powell because Powell is not listening to Trump about the direction in which interest rates should go. And there has been a tradition historically that the Fed is independent. That is, the Fed determines the direction of interest rates, and that the executive branch, the Fed doesn't pay attention to it. The executive branch could make its preferences clear, but at the end of the day, the Fed makes the decision. Trump has expressed disdain for that. He believes that the executive, he, should be making interest rate decisions. He believes he should be able to have influence on the Fed. And this has become a huge issue in financial markets. They're constantly tracking who might be the next Fed chairman. Is he somebody who will easily cave to anything that Trump wants? Have we dissolved, in a sense, the independence of the Federal Reserve? Now, we just had a retirement or a resignation from the Fed. Adriana Kugler stepped aside from the Fed, has left the board. This is the board that votes on raising or lowering interest rates, among other things. This is the governing board of the Federal Reserve. And in her place, Trump has appointed Stephen Miran, who is his chief economic, one of his main economic advisors, and one of the, you could call them, architects of the Trump tariff policy, or at least one of the economists who try to rationalize the tariffs and what they're doing and how they are functioning. Anyway, Stephen Miran is a Trump loyalist. He's a Trump yes man. He is somebody that I think will do what Trump tells him to do. Now, he's not going to be chairman. He will be on the board that votes on these kind of things. And Stephen Miran has an interesting history because he has written about the Fed, and he has advocated, for changes at the Fed. But what's interesting about Stephen is that his advocacy is primarily to make the Fed more independent. He has, when he was, before he joined the Trump administration, argued, he works at the Manhattan Institute, he argued that the Fed needs to be more independent, that it needs to have more disagreement at the board level, that the chairman of the Fed should be less powerful. The chairman of the Fed has been very powerful over the years and basically has dictated policy. But that there should be complete independence of the Fed from the executive. Indeed, he has argued that one of the problems is that being on the Fed board, and doing the president's bidding often leads to juicy jobs at the executive. And he has said that he was against like a kind of a revolving door between the Fed and the White House, which is kind of curious because he is the epitome of a revolving door because he's going to go from the White House to the Fed. He's only probably going to be there until January 31 next year, and then he's going to go back to the White House. And during that period, he's going to do Trump's bidding, and that's pretty clear. He wrote, so once one leaves the Federal Reserve, one should be prohibited from taking a role in the executive branch for a period of time. He also wrote, you have to remove the incentive that Fed officials have for trying to please a sitting president. And yet, he's being appointed to the board to please the sitting president. He also, last year, criticized the Fed for lowering interest rates. He now is going to go to the Fed to argue for lowering them even further. So it does seem pretty clear that that Miran is a sellout. He's selling out in his own ideas. He's selling out his own beliefs in order to remain close to Trump, in order to do Trump's bidding. So so that's where we are with the new appointment to the Fed. In addition, the Fed team is actively looking for who would replace Powell. Supposedly the list is now expanded to at least 10 different candidates. Some of them pretty respected people, whether Fed regional bank presidents of the Fed or advisors, economic advisors or economists. Others less respected, some of them within the universe of the Trump world, some of them outside of it. Fed Governor Christopher Wheeler, for example, is being considered. And the process is being run by Besant, who is probably one of the better people in the administration, but still, at the end of the day, very much a Trump yes man. It's going to be really interesting to see who he picks. He won't pick anybody like John Taylor, who he considered in 2018 when he ultimately picked Powell. He won't pick somebody like John Taylor who wants to follow a rule that limits what the Fed can do. It just follows the math. He will pick somebody who will follow Trump, who will do as the president wants. And this, of course, is incredibly dangerous. The markets are following this closely. Every time he mentions getting rid of Powell, the market goes down. And the market will, I think what you'll see in the next few months is trial balloons. They will mention a name as a possibility for the Fed, and they'll watch what happens to the stock market and the bond market. Because while Trump is completely driven by whim and whatever he feels like and whatever, he doesn't like upsetting the financial markets. He wants them to like him. And as a consequence, he's likely to pick a candidate that maybe will listen to him, but also that the market likes. And whether they can find somebody who does both, I don't know. And then it'll be a question of which one does he preference. Does he preference his own ability to manipulate the Fed? Or does he put a preference on what the market likes? I hope he listens to the market. The market is much more rational than he is. But who knows? It's very, very hard to tell. He hasn't listened to the market with regard to tariffs. And it's hard to tell what he will do with the Federal Reserve or not. But it's clear that even good candidates, people who look on paper pretty good, are willing to sell their souls once they enter the Trump universe and ultimately get appointed from them. The market is used to tariffs, but the market will not be used to tariffs. As soon as tariffs there's a clear indication that tariffs have a negative impact on the U.S. economy, the market will respond. The market will respond to the numbers. The market will respond to earnings. The market will respond to GDP numbers. They will respond to employment numbers. That will happen. It's still not clear how tariffs filter through into the economy and how big of an impact they have. And right now, there are a lot of positive trends in technology, particularly AI, that are steering the market in a positive direction. And employment numbers looked pretty good up until last week. They don't look as good now, but the market is still hesitant because it doesn't exactly know how the economy is going to play out. But at the end of the day, the market will not ignore the sheer numbers. Now, we'll talk about it in a minute. Actually, now we'll talk about it in the context of Bitcoin. The market goes through periods of insanity, of clear irrationality, of things that just don't make any sense. I've experienced it at least twice in my life. I've experienced it very up close and personal in the sense that money was at stake. My money was at stake. My investors' money was at stake. And I've seen the market go haywire and go really nutty. The first time I saw this, and again, I had a front row seat with money invested, was during the dot-com bubble, when the market just, we'll talk about it in a minute, but the market just went nuts. And I saw it during the meme stock phenomenon. What was it, 2001 or 2002? I think it was one. Which GameStop and other stocks. I had no money in that part of the market at that point in time, but it was just an insane phenomena. What happened, and you're seeing it right now. I don't know if you're seeing it in the Bitcoin price. I don't have an opinion about Bitcoin price. and I don't know what it should be, and I don't know, I don't own Bitcoin, and I don't buy Bitcoin because I don't know how to price it, and I don't think anybody else does. I've never heard anybody explain to me how they value Bitcoin. It's a speculative asset where the asset's value nobody can explain. But the businesses now that are being built around Bitcoin remind me almost to the T of what happened during the dot-com bubble. And let me give you some illustrations. So there's an article today in the Financial Times, and it describes a semiconductor company, a very small publicly traded semiconductor company that has been struggling. It really struggling. Very difficult to raise money, do anything, and the CEO didn't know what to do. Right? Didn't know what to do. And he read about a healthcare company that had bought crypto and seen its stock price soar. A healthcare company buying crypto and the stock price went up. Now remember, the only way you can buy crypto is with money. And the money had to come from somewhere. You either have to borrow it, sell shares in it, or use cash that you have to buy it. In any case, you're just swapping one asset for another. If you have cash, you're swapping cash for Bitcoin. If you're issuing debt, then you're taking on a liability in order to get this asset. But it's not free. The Bitcoin doesn't just appear. And the stock price soared. Now, I understand why would the stock price move at all? Maybe because of anticipation of Bitcoin going up. But then if you all anticipate Bitcoin going up, you just buy Bitcoin. Why would you buy a share in a healthcare company that owns Bitcoin? Why is that an advantage? You can just buy Bitcoin and wait for it to go up. So anyway, this semiconductor CEO went out there and he went to the board and he convinced the board to launch a Bitcoin strategy. And this company raised $384 million through debt and by selling shares. And they used that money. They told the investors they were going to use this money to buy Bitcoin. They bought Bitcoin. Nothing else about the business changed. They didn't improve efficiency. They didn't discover a new microprocessor. They didn't lower the price. Nothing changed in the business. And yet the share price went up 160%. 160% after they bought Bitcoin. The CEO says, I could not say this last year, but today I'm a big believer. I'm 100% convinced today that Bitcoin is here to stay. Now, this is all a strategy that was initiated by Michael Saylor, who has basically created this, we talked about this in a past show, created this company called Strategy, where they buy Bitcoin, and people buy the stock of Strategy for double the value of the Bitcoins, even though all the company does is hold Bitcoin. If you wanted exposure to Bitcoin, why wouldn't you just buy the Bitcoin? Now, it's true that Saylor is using a lot of leverage, i.e. debt, to buy the Bitcoin. So there's a lot of upside. But there's a massive amount of downside given the volatility in Bitcoin. And indeed, the shares are up 3,000% in 5 years. And again, are trading at double the value of the Bitcoin they hold. And you're seeing biotech companies, gold miners, hotel stocks, electric vehicle companies, a vape maker, all rushing to buy crypto tokens backed by investors who want a slice of the crypto pie without actually owning the digital asset directly, and are willing to pay a huge premium for that slice of a pie. Now, what does this remind me of? It reminds me of during the dot-com era. All kinds of companies would add .com to their name. They would do nothing different, but just add .com to their name, and their stock price would go through the roof. There was a week in April of 1999, it was April 1999, where if a bank announced that they had a plan one day to have a website and have, you know, some semblance of internet banking, their stock doubled, tripled. Now, it all came back down very quickly. Within the week, it went up and it went down. But there were days where stock prices doubled or tripled. And again, you just added a .com, or you said you had an internet initiative. You just put internet in your description. You put internet into a press release, and your stock went up. I mean, this is exactly the signs of a bubble. You know, in the year to August 5th, so in the first, 7 months of the year, 154 public companies have either raised or committed to raise a combined total of $98.4 billion in order to buy crypto. Right? Before this year, $33.6 billion had been raised by 10 companies. Now 154. 154. Now you tell me 154 companies now understand crypto, know that what the hell, including, I don't know, the hotel company and the vape maker, they all now understand crypto. They get it, they understand it fully, and they're committed to buying it because it makes a business strategic decision, it just makes a logical decision. I mean, this is nuts, and it's not surprising that Bitcoin and many of the other crypto tokens are gone through the roof. You can see where the demand is coming from. All these companies are buying. And anytime Bitcoin dips, these people step in and buy more. So whether you think crypto long-term is going to change the world and is going to be money or not, because look, there was no question in 1999 that the internet was going to change the world. It didn't change the fact that there was a bubble. It didn't change the fact that people are doing really, really stupid things. It didn't change the fact that investors, some investors at least, completely lost their minds. Yeah, the internet was going to be huge. The internet was going to change the world. But many of the strategies and many of the companies that were being valued at astronomical valuations were going to lose it all. We're going to go bankrupt. A lot of them went bankrupt. Hundreds, maybe even thousands of dot-com companies went bankrupt in the years to follow. Indeed, the NASDAQ, which went up over 90% in 1999, went down 75% in the 2.5 years after that. Now, I don't know how big the bubble is right now, but there's a bubble in these stocks, in the crypto affiliated stocks. And there's going to be a lot of blood in the street when this bubble bursts. Let's say Bitcoin goes down 20%, which is not a lot for Bitcoin. Bitcoin's gone down 20% many times in its history. What about the people who used a lot of debt in order to fund their purchases of Bitcoin? And now they can't make the payments on the debt. They have to start selling Bitcoin in order to make the payments. Well, them selling the Bitcoin is going to increase the pressure for this price to go even further down. And that forces other people who took out debt in order to fund Bitcoin, they're going to have to sell some Bitcoin to pay it down. What about some of these companies that are legit companies that have actual productive stuff that they do, that suddenly have a huge amount of Bitcoin, and now they have to write down all that Bitcoin because the price of Bitcoin has gone down? What's going to happen to their shares? What's going to happen to their stock? A stock that's gone up 160%. How much is it going to go down if Bitcoin goes down 10%? How much is that stock going to go down? How much is the stock going to go down if Bitcoin goes down 20%? Now, as long as this hype keeps going, as long as people keep raising money to buy more Bitcoin, by the way, the Trump organization is buying $2 billion of crypto, just to hold. So as long as that is happening, the price of Bitcoin will go up or stay stable or stay near its highs. But what happens when this money doesn't keep flowing in? At some point it runs out. What happens if Bitcoin crashes or just goes down? All these stock prices will fall as well. And a lot of these companies won't be able to pay their bondholders. And investors are going to lose money. And you could see this filter through the entire Bitcoin ecosystem and the whole crypto market, which would be really sad because there's probably some good stuff in crypto, just like with the internet. Ultimately, something good will come of this, but right now, it's insane. There's a huge amount of risk being pumped into the stock market right now through these companies. 164 of them. We're not talking about one or two. And when crypto comes down, if crypto comes down, and these companies are struggling, and they're going to go out to try to raise money, who's going to give them money? The stock is plummeting. The crypto is plummeting. Why would anybody invest in them? So right now, companies are saying the only way I can raise money is if I promise people that the money will be used to buy crypto. People will throw money at them. Now, some of this can be explained by differences in tax law. For example, the countries where you pay a very high capital gains tax if you make money on Bitcoin, on crypto. But you pay a much lower capital gains tax if you make money on a stock. So the way to get exposure to Bitcoin is by buying the stock, because then if it goes up, you pay less capital gains taxes. But at what price? At what price? Here's a company in the UK. It's a website designer called the Smarter Web Company. Good name. They made a profit of about £93,000 in basically the first 4 months of the year. So not a lot of money. It has a market capitalization that the company is worth £545 million. Profit of 93,000 over 4 months. So let's say, 300,000 over the year. 545 million. Why? Because they have 242 million worth of Bitcoin. But even if you just price the Bitcoin, that's 242. Where's the other 300 million pounds coming from? Where's that value coming from? The 93,000 in profit? I mean, this is truly insane. This is, I can't think of anything, but this is a unbelievable bubble. And it's not, I've always been skeptical of Bitcoin. I'm still skeptical of Bitcoin. Put that aside. Even if you're a true believer in Bitcoin, this is insane. This doesn't make any sense. There's a U.S. thermal energy company called QULR Technology. It has a market value of about $210 million. It only makes $9 million it doesn't make any profit. No profit. $9.4 million in operating losses. But it has $120 million worth of Bitcoin. So it has a $210 million valuation, about double the value of the Bitcoin that I hold. I mean, what I should do is I should promise to buy Bitcoin with whatever money I can collect for the Yaron Brook show. I'll say I'll buy $100 million of Bitcoin if you give me $100 million. And I promise to hold it for a year. And let's see if anybody gives me $100 million to buy Bitcoin. I don't think it'll work, for a variety of reasons. Anyway, this is kind of crazy. And it's not just Bitcoin. it's Ether, it's Solana, it's basically across the board the various tokens, and it's yeah. Venture capitalists are getting in on this. Not the famous venture capitalists, not the big venture capitalists, the smaller ones. And of course, you could go and buy an ETF for Bitcoin. You can get Bitcoin much cheaper by just buying an ETF. Why would you buy Strategy, the company, when an ETF gives you just as much exposure to Bitcoin without the risk, without paying double the value of Bitcoin? Now again, there are some tax advantages to buying the stock in some countries. Not in the US, there isn't. And indeed, a lot of investors are saying, a lot of companies are saying, you know, the US market is probably saturated. So we've basically collected all the money possible from American suckers. We're now looking for suckers internationally. We're looking for suckers who live outside of the United States. Sebastian says, we love you, Yaron. Woo! I'm so happy you guys love me. That's great. You know, I'd appreciate an expression of love that had dollar signs next to it in a sense of a trade. I mean, I appreciate you telling me that is really valued. But, you know, this show is funded by support from you guys. It doesn't exist without you. Anyway, I'm just saying it's a warning. As a lot of people are saying, this is going to end badly. And I will second that. You know, one of those predictions, somebody should write them down. Hey, guys, write my prediction down. This is going to end badly. It's going to end badly for investors. And it could end badly for Bitcoin, because there's a spiral effect where it goes down, and then sellers make it go down even further. At some point, you run out of suckers' money. At some point, the greater fool theory doesn't work anymore because there's no greater fool than you. So just a warning. These stocks and these cryptos can go down as fast as they went up. Actually, on the way down, they often go down faster. So you can, I'm not giving a time frame because I don't know how long the greater fool theory can last. It can last a long time. The greater fool, you know, investment strategy, it can last a long time. So beware, beware. All right, let's see. There was a lot of economic topics. We got 2 international topics and then a fun one at the end. All right, so as we said yesterday, Israel has now announced that it is going to occupy Gaza City. It is going to go in there and take it over. It's going to ask the population to leave and go to a humanitarian zone that they're going to set up. And they're going to militarily occupy the place and destroy the Hamas infrastructure there and destroy as many Hamas fighters as they can. Clearly they know, and everybody's very aware that they are putting the lives of the hostages at risk. As I've been saying from the beginning of the war, that is a risk worth taking. The only mission should be to destroy Hamas, and the secondary mission, the primary mission to destroy Hamas, the secondary to free the hostages. You cannot sacrifice the destruction of Hamas for the sake of the hostages. Anyway, this plan is now coming under attack by many people. The Trump administration seemed to be supportive so far, although, as I've said in the past, Trump could change his mind very, very quickly. But so far, Trump is supporting this. But you're seeing a number of Republicans, in addition to pretty much all the Democrats, opposing this plan. Republicans are skeptical, you know, you know, this is the stunning altruism that comes across, right? Here's Ryan Zinke, a Republican from Montana. Occupation, this is occupation of Gaza City. Occupation for security also comes with a responsibility for providing humanitarian assistance and creating an economic future for your enemy. Just add "for your enemy" at the end of the sentence. It tells me if that makes sense. For people who want to rape and kill and murder and slaughter your population, But you have a responsibility for providing humanitarian assistance. And not just that, you have a responsibility for creating an economic future for these people who want to see you dead and who brought this upon themselves. But you're responsible. No. They are responsible. I mean, what Israel should do is flatten Gaza, destroy Hamas, and walk away. And let the Arab world, let the Americans, let the Europeans fund the reconstruction of Gaza and provide for an economic future. Israel should do nada, zip, nothing to provide that economic future. And if they keep them poor enough, then they won't be a threat. I'm not suggesting that's a solution. I'm just saying it's ridiculous to say that Israel has the altruistic, self-sacrificial responsibility to create a future for the Palestinians. Anyway, you Republicans are arguing against this, and Democrats are arguing against this. Israel is losing support generally across the board in America over what's going in Gaza. At the same time, Starmer, the Prime Minister of England, is condemning Israel's plan to take over Gaza City. This action will do nothing to bring an end to this conflict or to help secure the release of the hostages. It will only bring more bloodshed. Why? I mean, it'll bring more security ultimately to Israel by destroying Hamas and releasing the hostages. I mean, one way or the other, they'll either be released or they'll die, but it'll be over. He continues, every day the humanitarian crisis in Gaza worsens, and hostages taken by Hamas are being held in appalling and inhumane conditions. Yeah, and wait a second. Is he condemning Hamas for that? I don't see any condemnation of Hamas. All I hear is condemnation of Israel. What we need, he says, is a ceasefire, a surge in humanitarian aid, the release of all hostages by Hamas, and a negotiated solution. Hamas can play no part in the future of Gaza and must leave as well as disarm. But that's being offered to Hamas. That possibility, that option has been offered to Hamas. Hamas has been told, if you disarm and leave Gaza and release the hostages, Israel will leave and will not occupy all this other stuff and will bring in humanitarian aid. And Hamas has turned that down. So what is Israel supposed to do if Hamas keeps turning down every plan to release the hostages and to bring about a ceasefire and to bring about an end to the war? No, but let's blame Israel. It's Israel's fault. Starmer continues, our message is clear. A diplomatic solution is possible. How? But both sides must step away from the path of destruction. Moral equivocation here. This is not about both sides. This is Hamas not wanting peace. This is Hamas not wanting a deal. This is Hamas wanting Palestinians to starve so they can use that in a PR campaign against Israel, which you, Starmer, are helping, assisting, facilitating. And of course, the Liberal Democrats in the UK are worse than Labour when it comes to Israel. They hate Israel. This is their comment, right? The plan will only serve to wreak more devastation on the lives of millions of Gazans, millions, whose home and communities have already been destroyed. I wonder why. While endangering the lives of those hostages still held by Hamas, as if he cares. Rather than sitting on its hands and issuing strongly worded statements, the UK government needs decisive action. What is that action? Penalize Israel. Keir Starmer needs to stop the export of all UK arms to Israel today and sanction Netanyahu and his cabinet. I'm sick of sanctions. The whole thing is just sickening. The Green Party and the SNP Party have also called the PM to sanction Netanyahu and his ministers and to stop all UK arms sales to Israel. This is Great Britain. In the meantime, Germany is jumping in. They are all in. They are doing what the liberals in the Liberal Democrats in the UK want. This is the headline of the AP. Germany halts military exports to Israel amid outcry over Netanyahu's plan. Germany is not providing weapons anymore to Israel because it doesn't like the plan. They are caving, I guess, to the Muslim minority in Israel, in Germany. Recently, a baby born in a German hospital was named after Sinwar, the leader of Hamas, the planner of October 7th, the leader of October 7th. He is now a hero among some people in Germany, among Muslims in Germany. Yeah, so let's appease the German Sinwars. And if you think that these Islamists, anybody who calls his kid after Sinwar is an Islamist, these jihadists would not do to the German population what Hamas did to the Israelis, then you're delusional. They would do it in a heartbeat. And instead of treating Hamas and anybody who is affiliated with Hamas and anybody who supports Hamas as the enemy in Europe today, they're appeasing them and thus setting themselves in the course of destruction. So the world is done on Israel. Of course, internally in Israel, there's a lot of criticism of this plan. Internally in Israel, there's a lot of people who just want to cave to Hamas and just want the hostages free. That is the only thing that matters, and they're willing to compromise and sell out for the sake of the hostages. And I mean, what's happening to the hostages is unbelievably tragic and horrific. But this is all Hamas's fault. And if you, to the extent that you want to blame the Israeli government, it is that they ever compromised, that they ever appeased Hamas, ever in its history, before October 7th. So now to continue to appease Hamas in order to free the hostages, so we can have more October 7th in the future. But that's a strong sentiment within the Israeli public. All right, quickly on Ukraine. So it seems like yesterday I mentioned that Trump might have set a condition for his meeting with Putin, that Putin meet with Zelensky. Well, that condition is gone. Trump and Putin will meet soon. And there is a plan on the table, it seems like, that Putin has, he knows what he wants, and that he is, I guess, moderated enough to justify supposedly Trump meeting with him. And the reason Putin might be moderating mildly is basically that Russia's big offensive, summer offensive, particularly in the northeast, in the Sumy area, has basically been repelled. The Ukrainians have stopped them and actually taken some territory back. Moscow cannot break through. They chip away, they gain a few feet of land, a little bit, as the months go by, in the Donbas area, but nowhere else. And in Sumy, they had 50,000 troops. They had a whole campaign. They had a whole strategy. They're basically being held back, pushed back, and Ukrainians have reoccupied some of the land. So part of what's going on is that I think Putin, maybe, we'll see, has realized that if he's going to sustain this militarily, it's going to take a long time. I think he also believes, and I think he has every reason to believe, that he can manipulate Trump and that he can get a good deal out of Trump, a deal that would allow Russia to rearm itself, to replenish its reserves, so a ceasefire which will allow Russia in a year, 2 years, 5 years, to re-engage with Ukraine and finish the job. I'm pretty sure that Putin will not do a deal that does not give him the option to restart the war at his discretion somewhere in the future. And I really do believe that Trump is quite capable of completely capitulating to Putin and giving Putin much of what he wants. The latest is that Putin is willing to stop the war for basically the Donbass area, which means Luhansk and Donetsk. He already controls all of Luhansk. The Russian army controls all of Luhansk. And it controls much of Donetsk, but not all of it. So he would demand the rest of Donetsk and Luhansk. Now the question is, what happens to Zaporizhia, whatever it's called, and Gershon, which the Russians occupy a big chunk of both provinces? It's not clear what Russia is planning for those, but there is some rumors that basically he's going to offer trade. Give me complete control of Luhansk and Donetsk, and I'll give the other two provinces back to Ukraine. Now, I'm dubious about that because the other two provinces are what provide him with a land route to Crimea, which he, of course, expects to get full recognition of. But maybe that's the big compromise. Maybe that's what happens once he's realized he can't win in Ukraine, particularly if the United States provides Ukraine with the weapons it desires. So there might be some swap of territory, Luhansk and Donetsk, for these other two provinces. And while this is unlikely to please the Ukrainians might accept it, primarily because Ukraine is tired. Polls show that the Ukrainians are fed up with the war. They've lost the belief that they can win this, and they're willing to come to some kind of compromise, and that Zelensky will have no choice but to do what his people want, and that is to compromise and sell out. Now, I blame this completely on Biden and Trump. Biden for not providing the weapons fast enough, for not allowing the weapons to be used, and for not providing the right kind of weapons. Trump for spending the first few months in office lambasting Zelensky, attacking Zelensky, and befriending Putin, and giving the Ukrainian and deflating any kind of confidence the Ukrainian people had, and again, resisting providing the kind of weapons that would allow the Ukrainians to actually push the Russians out of Ukrainian territory. So, America has failed Ukraine, and the consequence of that are going to be basically a Ukrainian compromise that I think long-term is going to be incredibly damaging to the country and to Europe, because I think it puts NATO at risk. Every indication is that in addition to these territories, that Putin is going to demand a regime change, Zelensky out as president of Ukraine, and some kind of puppet government in Ukraine, a changing of the Ukrainian constitution to commit Ukraine to neutrality, so it cannot join NATO, the abolishment of NATO's open door policy of accepting new members in, and basically reducing Ukraine's military significantly so it cannot defend itself in the future if Russia attacks. Now, maybe that's just a starting position in terms of negotiation, but he's negotiating against a softie called Trump, so he might be able to get away with it. He might be able to get away with it. This is where we are. It's not going to be pretty. Now, Trump has said that they're very close to an agreement that will end the ongoing invasion of Ukraine. He says the negotiations involve getting back some territory back, and the swapping of territories to the betterment of both. I don't see how Ukraine is better if it has to give up big chunks of eastern Ukraine. But a lot of this is going to be in the details of what to expect in the future, and what commitments, if any, Russia makes to not invade Ukraine in the future, and whether the United States is willing to give Ukraine security guarantees, which, by the way, it gave Ukraine when Ukraine gave up its nuclear program in the 1990s. And the United States has completely defaulted on those security guarantees. So I'm not sure what the security guarantees are worth. The only thing that really could secure Ukraine is NATO membership. So swapping of territories plus NATO membership, maybe that's a deal Ukraine should accept, given the world situation. But right now, it does not look promising. All right, one other international story, quickly, before I do the final story on the media. It just happened, I guess, a couple of hours ago. The leaders of Azerbaijan and Armenia, who've been fighting wars for a long time, and fought a war recently with Azerbaijan, won pretty decisively. And Armenia, that expected Russia to come to its aid, never got that aid from Russia. Armenia and Azerbaijan have signed a framework for a peace treaty that was, well, I mean, Donald Trump is taking credit for it, even though the peace treaty has been negotiated for quite a while with the participation of Turkey and France. So it's going to be interesting. But Trump is taking credit for it anyway, and there is an element of American commitment here. So there is it looks like there'll be a peace deal between Azerbaijan and Armenia, and this is good for that region of the world. One of the big good things about this is that it's shutting the Russians out. Russia will have no influence on Armenia or Azerbaijan. Russia's been a significant player in the Caucasus. It still controls Georgia. So in a sense, the West has given up on Georgia and given Georgia over to the Russians, but has gained influence over Armenia, and Azerbaijanis have been pro-West for quite a while. They were the Armenian Prime Minister and the Azeri President were both in the White House. They signed this framework, which is a framework for a concrete pathway to peace. There's a big issue about creating a transit corridor between Azerbaijan and Turkey. The Azeris are ethnically Turks, for what's that worth, and Turkey is an ally of Azerbaijan. And of course, the Armenians accuse the Turks of a genocide, of a Turkish genocide against the Armenians. They're not friends. But the Azeris would like a corridor to be able to reach Turkey easily without going through basically Armenia, and to be able to engage in trade with Turkey. Well, it looks like the United States is going to receive exclusive development rights for an extended period for a transit corridor through Armenia to be named, catch this, the Trump Route for International Peace and Prosperity. The Trump Route. This is good. The route will be operated according to Armenian law, so it'll still be Armenian territory, and the U.S. will sublease the land to a consortium for infrastructure and management, potentially for the first time pulling, the South Caucasus away from Russia and into a close relationship with the West. So I think that's the best thing about this, is the disconnect between Armenia and Russia. But this was already happening. Armenia was getting close to France. Primarily, France is the major ally in the West of the Armenians. But Trump has stepped in, taking credit for this, putting America in the middle of it. I mean, I don't know how well this goes with MAGA's commitment to not intervention. Now we own a piece of Armenia. What happens if there's a war there? Do we intervene? What do we do? I'm not MAGA, so I can't comment. I don't know how that all works out. But I'm curious how MAGA views this. Let's see. One other story that's unrelated to foreign policy, but it just came across my thing, and it's worth mentioning. So there's new body cam footage that was released from the January 6th riot at the U.S. Capitol building in 2001. And what this particular footage shows is that Jared Weiss, who is now a senior official in all places in the Justice Department, he's a senior official in the Justice Department appointed by Trump. You can hear him in this video aggressively berating the police and calling for other rioters to kill police officers. To kill police officers. Police of the U.S. Capitol and the D.C. Metro Police. This is a guy who's now a senior official at the Justice Department. Somebody who is actively engaged in inciting violence against police and urging the crowd to kill police officers. He was rewarded with a position in the Justice Department by Trump. Now, if you don't find that alarming, if you don't, big deal, so what? I don't know. There's something wrong. Something wrong with the world. All right, finally, there's you know how you read stuff in the news and you don't know if it's hard to tell if it's true or not true. And we all know the media is biased and the media has issues. And sometimes you read a story about something you actually know pretty well, right? Something you're involved in, something, maybe it's part of your career, and and suddenly you realize how just goddamn awful the media is because of how they're portraying the thing that you know. Well, I came across this story that was published yesterday in Axios, and it turns out similar stories have been published in other publications. And this is the title of the story. Scoop. Dialogue. A secretive forum plans DC area campus. And, okay, secretive forum. I mean, and I don't know about the DC area campus. I'm going to put that aside because I don't know the truth of that. But here's kind of some of what's written about it. Why it matters, according to Axios. Dialogue, often compared to a tech-era Bilderberg. Bilderberg is the gathering of leaders and CEOs and politicians by the Bilderberg family, the big Jewish banking family, and is often being claimed to be the focal point of all conspiracy theories. They are the people who really run the world. The Bilderberg conference is where that's where it really happens. Most conspiracy theories have the Bilderbergs and their conference as the epicenter of the conspiracy to run the world. Anyway, dialogue, often compared to tech-era Bilderberg, I've never heard that, by the way, has quietly become one of the most elite and mysterious gatherings for CEOs, elected officials, and intellectual heavyweights. Now, I read this and I was like, whoa. I hate to break it to you guys, but I am now officially, according to Axios, an intellectual heavyweight because I am a member of Dialogue. I attend these secretive conferences where I guess we kind of scheme to control the world. So I'm a member of Dialogue. I am one of the intellectual heavyweights that I invited. And it is a secretive organization in the sense that they don't market themselves. They don't advertise. It's by invitation only. It is tech heavy, so it is a tech era. It is filled with CEOs and other heavyweight intellectuals. And some politicians, some elected officials and politicians and former politicians and former officials and former CEOs. It's mostly, most of the people there are young. I'm often there and I think, God, I'm the oldest person in the room. And I'm not going to discuss too much about what happens there, other than to say it's fun. It is, but now I'm part of the Illuminati, I guess. I've always been concerned about the idea that the Jews are running the world, and they haven't invited me to participate. Right? I'm part of that tribe. Why did nobody tell me that I'm part of the tribe that runs the world? And maybe now I've made it. Maybe this is a sign that now I've been invited. The story goes on about this. This is a source invited to participate in dialogue said that amid, quote, rising demand for quieter reflection in an always-on world, dialogue bills itself as offering global elites. I didn't know I was a global elite. I mean, I'm learning so many things about myself. the chance to talk candidly across ideological lines, away from their phones and the pressure of social media and news media and their stakeholders. Now, it is true that dialogue is filled with people from across the political spectrum. Nobody there is quite from my side of the political spectrum, but there are a lot of liberals, a lot of leftists at dialogue, a lot, I'd say a majority probably, or a significant minority. There are quite a few conservatives. You know, I met, you know, I'm not going to say who's a member because that's, you know, not, that's part of the deal. But I've met some pretty influential people who are in the world of conservative politics and the conservative world. A lot of, you know, again, so left and right. A lot of people are pro-Israel, and there's some people who are very anti-Israel. I had a long 2-hour discussion one night years ago with a Palestinian doctor who really was convinced the Palestinians want peace and they want to, you know, all this stuff, and it's all Israel's fault. It has a few libertarians, not many, but a few. You know, and again, I won't say who else is part of this. Although the names mentioned in terms of past participants, Peter Thiel, who is one of the founders of Dialogue, but I have never seen Peter Thiel at a Dialogue, so I don't think he's involved and hasn't been involved in a long time. But they mention in the article people like Elon Musk, I've never seen him there. Larry Summers, never seen him. Chamath, whose name I can't pronounce. Henry Kravitz, Wes Moore, Eric Schmidt, Grover Norquist, Ben Hur, Sophie Bush. 90% of the people mentioned I've never seen there. Cory Booker, the senator, Rima al-Saud, the Saudi ambassador, Tulsi Gabbard, who else? A bunch of others. Anyway, Gary Kasparov, Jonathan Haidt. I think Jonathan Haidt was there once. Anyway, I haven't seen them. Now, I don't go to all of them. I only go periodically. They're very expensive. I get a discount, and it's still very expensive to attend these conferences. I attended last year. I am not attending this year. I'm going to try to attend next year. But these are gatherings where you really do get real discussions, content-wise. They are off the record, so nothing's being recorded. And all the sessions are small, so that you really get discussions, debates. You really get to know people. You really get to discuss ideas with people. I find it fascinating. And it's a great place for me to test out my ideas against some of the smartest people in the world, CEOs of tech companies, venture capitalists, CEOs of finance companies. I mean, it really is just a fascinating place, and an exciting place, which I enjoy a lot. And I find that as I express my ideas, people don't agree with me, but they treat it with respect. And it's good to know that you can be in the presence of people who disagree with you, part of the elite today, left and right, and you can be dealt with respectfully. So objectivism is not so, I mean, they hear Ayn Rand, they cringe a little bit, but then they hear me speak and they go, that's kind of interesting, you know. So I enjoy it. But I found it funny that there's these stories. I'm not going to say much more about the organization because, again, it's off the record, and the idea is not to make it public and to keep it off the record. But it's just funny because, the way the article is written in a conspiratorial tone, and this kind of way of addressing it is so removed from reality. There's nothing about dialogue that is about, let's take over the world, let's have an influence. It's much more about having conversations. It's much more about having debates and having discussions. It's much more about having debates and having discussions. Oh my God. Anyway, I just read Anne's comment. She says, maybe Tulsi Gabbard could win Yaron over. The very fact that somebody would want an evil, just ridiculously unprincipled and unhinged human being like Tulsi Gabbard to win me over to anything is pretty sad. It's pretty sad. Capitalist Spy says, if Iran rules the world, we would know it. Would you? Would you know it? If I ruled the world, would you know it? Maybe I do rule the world and you don't know it. Maybe this is all a front. That would be a tough one to pull off. Okay, anyway, that is the news for August 8th, 2025, delivered to you from Lisbon, Portugal. I actually today did a podcast with a member of the Portuguese Parliament. I wonder if an American congressman would interview me in a podcast. But in Portugal, I was interviewed by a member of the Liberal Party here. They have 9 seats in the parliament. Not a very big party, but not an insignificant one. They got 5.5% of the vote in the last election. And he interviewed me. We had a really good conversation over an hour about objectivism, about Ayn Rand. He was heavily influenced by Ayn Rand. And we then went out to lunch and had, sat out in a beautiful outdoor restaurant overlooking the mouth of the river that flows through Lisbon, that flows into the Atlantic Ocean. Beautiful setting. We had a nice lunch, and I'm hoping to come back to Portugal in October and do a series of talks here. There seems to be quite a bit of interest. I gave a talk the other night at a jazz club. They only had like 2 days to advertise this, and they got a nice audience. I talked about Ayn Rand and about the Atlas Shrugged. So it was like a biographical and summarized the philosophy. It was a lot of fun and some new people there. So maybe there's some potential in Portugal. Let's see. Yeah, I wanted to tell you about some of the sponsors the Yaron Brook Show has. Hendershot Wealth, which is offering a product to potentially reduce, maybe eliminate, or certainly defer for the long run your capital gains taxes. It's legit. It provides you with a market return and a significantly reduced tax bill. It's not something you can do by yourself. A lot of you think that you're already doing it or you can do it by yourself. It's not. It's far more complex, far too complex for anybody to do individually. It is a product that is run by one of the largest asset managers in the U.S., but you can get access to it through Hendershot Wealth. I encourage you to go to Hendershot, 2 T's, wealth.com/YBS, Yaron Brook Show, YBS. You can also check out the video with me and Robert Hendershot on my YouTube channel, where we talk about this product, and you can find that under Sponsors playlist. Alex Epstein, right, is the leading thinker, I think, in the world on energy and climate change and everything to do with fossil fuels and so-called alternative energies, unreliable energy. Huge impact on the Trump administration, and I encourage you to follow his work. I think if you're interested in the world, you should follow Alex. You should follow what's going on in energy, which is a crucial part of the world in which we live. alexepstein.substack.com. alexepstein.substack.com. Finally, the Ayn Rand Institute is a sponsor. They are promoting or reminding everybody that they have an app for the iPhone and for Android. You can get it on the Apple App Store or in the Google App Store. It is an app that basically provides you with access to to a bunch of Ayn Rand material, to all of Leonard Peikoff's courses, all for free, by the way, completely free. You can really study objectivism. You can really deeply study objectivism just by having the app. Not having the app. Actually listening to the app. Actually taking the courses and taking them seriously. You can get access to the app at aynrand.org/start here. aynrand.org/start here. Everybody on the Yaron Brook Show should have the Ayn Rand Institute app, and you should be actively exploring its content. So check it out. All right, finally, you can still ask questions. We've only raised money for the first hour. We're into the second hour, so it'd be great to get your support. You can do stickers. Show me some love with the stickers. That would be great. Value for value. That doesn't require questions, so you don't have to come up with an idea for a question. I'm gonna thank James. I'm gonna thank Christos. I am going to thank, these are all people who gave stickers. Gail. I'm gonna thank Sebastian. Let's see, who else? There we go. That's all the stickers. So we could do a lot better than that. So consider doing a sticker. If you want to ask a question, consider asking a question. But in any case, support the show, because we can't do it without you. And of course, if you want to support it on a monthly basis, not have to worry about it, support just goes, then please go to patreon.com, sign up, Yaron Brook Show, and become a monthly supporter. Or you can do it on PayPal. Patreon is more stable, easier to change, easier to adjust. So I encourage people to do Patreon, but either one is fine with me. So please become a supporter of the Yaron Brook Show. You make this show possible. All right, we have a few questions. We have three $50 questions, so I'm going to take those first and those in order. Start with James. James writes, children have rights because they have the potential to develop reason. But how does this apply to dementia patients, people in comas? They are a class of humans that will never regain or develop the use of reason. Why are rights extended to them? Well, they're extended to them because they're human. Because we're not going to take human beings and start dividing them into groups by how much reason they have or how connected they are. But indeed, if you have dementia, what does it mean that you have rights? You don't have the full right to life. Usually somebody in that state has somebody appointed, some conservator, whether it's a family member or actually by the court if there's no family member, who actually is responsible for that human being. In a sense, they revert back to being a child. And somebody is making decisions for you. You no longer can make decisions for yourself. And you don't have full access, if you will, to your rights. So you can't be killed. Your property can't be taken away from you. But on the other hand, you don't make decisions for yourself. So it's a recognition that you are human, that you did have the capacity to reason, and that as a human being, the state and nobody else has the authority, the responsibility to decide how human you are, and therefore how many rights you have. As a human, you have rights. And now, when you're not fully capable of exercising those rights, the state or family or somebody is appointed to help you do it. And the same is true if somebody is born with, somebody's born with a mental illness, they don't exercise their full rights. Other people control what they can and cannot do, their family usually. If somebody's in a coma, the same thing happens. You can't dictate your life in a coma. And somebody else has the ability to unplug you and basically to kill you because you don't have full rights. And then the question is, will you ever regain consciousness? And if you're never going to regain consciousness, your family has the right, the potential, the possibility of unplugging you. And look, the fact is, if you're in a coma and you can't pay for it, then the hospital has the right to unplug you. Should have the right anyway to unplug you. So, and if you can't pay for it, and so, yeah, it's, so you have to think through every case, and you have to think through the implications, and you have to, but these are all human beings. They're not fully manifest as human beings, but they're all human beings. And as such, you don't want to put anybody, the courts or the government, in a position where they, okay, you have some rights but not others, or you don't have rights, or have three-quarters rights, you're a three-quarter human being. No, you have the basic rights, but those rights you can't exercise. Somebody else has to exercise for you, just like when you're a child. And maybe exercise is not the right word, but I think you get the idea. Normative Randroid and Mary Aline, thank you for the stickers. Really appreciate it. And you guys out there appreciate the support very much. Dave says, if Bitcoin became a national currency in America, does it then compete with T-bills? Well, I mean, if Bitcoin becomes a national currency, then what is the status of T-bills? If it becomes the currency and therefore the dollar goes away and the government cannot print money, then T-bills are no longer money. T-bills now have a default risk. You could default on T-bills. So T-bills become an asset that you invest in, but they have as part of them a default risk. And one of the advantages of something like Bitcoin or something like gold is that it forces the government to actually take into account the possibility that it will default, because it can't inflate it away. It can't default implicitly through inflation. It has to default explicitly, and that's a much healthier position to be in, because then the market can price the default risk and force, in a sense, or put pressure on the government to be much more physically responsible. You couldn't have the kind of deficit you have today and the kind of debt that you have today in a Bitcoin or gold denominated currency. It just wouldn't be possible. So getting rid of fiat currency, getting rid of currency that the government can just print on demand, is a huge advantage, a huge boon. And it makes T-bills not be money anymore, not be like money anymore, because they have default. Money is not something you default on. If money is gold, gold can default. It is what it is. Bitcoin is money. If it cannot default, it is what it is. It's a Bitcoin. Now, it's not clear where the value comes for the Bitcoin, but that's a whole other story. Thank you, Dave. $50, very, very generous. And another $50 question from Dave. Is every stock Bitcoin investment a venture towards a win-lose outcome, where investors hopes to profit within the cloud of financial potential chaos? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think the investment is not geared towards a win-lose proposition. It's geared towards it's geared towards a world in which Bitcoin only goes up. If Bitcoin only goes up in value, then some of these investments will return a positive return. But Bitcoin has to always and forever go up. It cannot go down and then significantly and then go up, because there's so much leverage in the system. There's so many of these stocks dependent on it, they will all crash and burn. And in that sense, it's a win-lose. It's not, but it's more likely actually to be a lose-lose. It's not clear who the winner here is if those stocks crash and burn. So for some people, I think this is, what you have in play here is if you will, the greater four theory. They are hoping that somebody will buy this stock from them at a higher price in the future, without the stock really having any basis, any foundation in reality. Again, the assumption is Bitcoin can never go down, always goes up. And maybe even if you believe that Bitcoin will go up in the future, it's going to be worth $1 million one day. Based on the history, you have to, and based on just the nature of Bitcoin, you have to accept the fact that it's going to be very volatile. And given that volatility, these valuations don't make any sense. These stock valuations make zero sense. It's just insanity. Non-Savage Algorithm. I've been listening to some digitally remastered Hitler speeches. Not to say he sounds like Trump completely, but they both say superficial platitudes and come across as dissatisfied with the world, that the world did them wrong in some way. Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I think that's true of every populist. If you found some speeches of Perón, the dictator of Argentina, the Peronist party is named after him. You will find the same thing, Mussolini, same thing. You will find all these kind of populist, right-wing populist dictators or wannabe dictators have the same style. They talk in the same kind of way, same kind of platitudes, the same anger, resentment, feeling of they being betrayed somehow by the world and they're getting back at it. And they're rallying people around getting back at the world. Esoteric Economy, thank you for the sticker. Really, really appreciate the support, guys. Andrew, what is it in the European philosophy that makes them so galled and animated by Israel? It's as though Israel threatens something very core of them. Altruism. I mean, altruism. Israel is standing up and acting in a self-interested way. It's acting in its own self-defense. It doesn't seem to view and care about the suffering and of the Palestinians, and it's clearly altruism. Again, I've said this many times. Before 1967, Israel represented the poor, the suffering, the pathetic, and they were the favorite of the Europeans. And after 1967, which was a war in which Israel won against 7 countries in 6 days, they were strong, and Europe shifted to hating Israel. This is all about altruism, and Europeans manifest altruism in this way just as the left in the United States manifests the same thing. And it's riddled with guilt because they also feel guilty about the Holocaust. So they feel guilty, particularly the Germans, but even the French. They feel guilty about what happened, what they did to the Jews. But on the other hand, they're shocked by the fact that Jews are now strong and powerful and can defend themselves. That feels wrong in some way, and not something they're willing to accept, and not, and their sympathies are going now to the other group that's suffering, and that is the Palestinians. I'll add to that Muslims in Europe are becoming a political force. There's no question, particularly in places like England, in the Labour Party. Muslims are a political force, and they have to appease their voters to some extent. Hopper Campbell. Trump just fired the head of the IRS. This is the 6th head of the IRS this year. Is this a signal to encourage more tax evasion? Is the GOP trying to make it harder for the IRS to operate? It certainly looks that way. I mean, they've cut their budget. They have made it more difficult for the IRS to operate. It's not clear why this guy was fired. It's not clear who he wants to put in his place. There's a lot of conflict and disagreement around the IRS. But yeah, they wanted to operate less effectively. How they expect to raise the revenue to pay off the debt and all of that, or to pay for the government expansion operation that they have, I don't know. All from tariffs, I guess. But they're very hostile to the IRS, which I share with them, but I'm not sure what exactly their game plan is with the IRS. It'll be interesting to see. Colleen, thank you. Really appreciate the support. Thank you, Colleen. Another sticker. Keep them coming. Michael, even without Rand, doesn't humanity gradually learn to be more reasonable and less violent? Since World War II, there's been more abundance, less warfare, etc. Maybe, but there was less violence, less warfare probably, and more culture and more civilization under Rome. And then it all disappeared and we became warring tribes and barbarians killing left and right, and much more wars than even under the Romans. Romans were pretty war-like already. So there's nothing deterministic about the direction. Yes, for the last 400 or so years, the West has or the world generally has become more peaceful, richer, more peaceful, less violent, and all of that. But is it given, deterministic, that will continue forever? No. Jennifer, did you know there's a Basque community in Boise, Idaho? I did not. They have Basque restaurants and a museum. They moved there to herd sheep in the 1800s. My husband has never been to Idaho, So maybe we will go there for vacation. Yeah, Idaho's pretty. It's a pretty state. I did not know the Basques were there. Basque food is at least as manifest in Basque country in Spain. It's some of the best food in the world, some of the best restaurants in the world on San Sebastian or in the region of San Sebastian in the north, in the Basque area of Spain. I don't know if the restaurants in Boise, Idaho are at that level. You'll have to tell me if you go there what they're like. But yeah, I would definitely go to a Basque restaurant in Idaho. Again, Basque, they know how to cook. They know how to make food. Not your average algorithm. Germany, we fixed our fascism problem by making it illegal to voice your opinions. Yes. Free speech, not a strong suit of Germany at all. And that means Germany's in decline. Free speech is the first thing, is one of the things to go that you expect a culture to decline once it's gone. Drin, is it worth for Putin to lose all the huge benefits of trade with the Western world, over 15% of Ukraine? Won't Russians hate him for this for decades? I don't know. If he gets Donbass, he'll claim victory. Russians seem to be willing to accept anything he tells them. The whole idea is if this happens, the West reopens to Russia and all the sanctions go away. But beyond that, I just don't know. How the Russians respond. But so far, Russians have just accepted anything Putin has told them. They have an authoritarian mentality. They have a mentality of a people ruled by authoritarians. Jonathan says, World War I follow-up. U.S. government was neutral before entering the war. Geography made it easier for the UK to buy American, so Germany attacked U.S. ships in New York Harbor. Yeah, but that neutrality, if Germany would have bought weapons from the U.S., would the U.S. have sold them to Germany? I don't think so. So even though it claimed neutrality, it was selling weapons to the U.K. in spite of that, and they wouldn't probably have sold weapons to the Germans. But again, I'd have to study much more, but I still think that this is a war that the United States did not have to enter, and I can't see any reason why Germany would want the United States to enter that war. So I'll at some point I'll read up more about World War I, and I will give you a fuller answer. And by the way, that was Ayn Rand's view, that the United States should have never entered World War I. It should have never gotten involved in Europe during that period. Probably shouldn't have sold arms to anybody. Should have let them just fight it out. No reason to sell arms to either party. Blaze Guitar Lessons. Is Milei privatizing water to the Israeli government-owned company called Mekorot? If so, is that bad? Also, do you think he'll win re-election? I don't know. I haven't read about that. Is it bad? Probably not, although it is a government-owned company. On the other hand, any step to privatize water, take it away from the hands of local bureaucrats is a good step. My guess is Mekorot is a profit-seeking business. It's not like beholden to the Israeli government in a sense that it's going to try to manipulate water in Argentina for Israel in some way. It's far away. So I think it's basically a company that's dedicated to making money, and that's a good thing to apply for water. So I'll try to read up on that. Do you think he'll win re-election? I do. He's very popular right now in Argentina. The real question is, will his political party win enough seats in parliament in the election coming up in October to allow Milei to pass the rest of his agenda? I hope so. Z400 Racer, thank you for the .com comparison. My pleasure. Fleshin, how Objectivism will consider really clever AI? They would possess reason, which makes them like us humans, but can we consider them life form? So they will not possess reason. Reason requires life. Reason requires consciousness. You are not reasoning when you're not conscious, because reason is a guided process. Reason is not something that happens automatically. It's something that is guided by consciousness. AI is not conscious. AI will be guided by an algorithm. It's guided by code. That is not the same. So there is no, AI cannot be self-aware because it's not aware. It's not aware of an outside world. It doesn't have awareness. And until it has awareness, it's not real AGI. It might be pretend AGI. It might be something else. It might be something new. But it's not a light form. If it's not conscious, it's not reasoning. It's doing math. But as a calculator does math, not as a human does math. So it's still an algorithm. Now, it's an amazing algorithm. It will be able to do amazing things, but it's not the equivalent of reasoning. It's not the equivalent of thinking, because it's not guided. It's not aware. At least that's my understanding. Reason is not a series of ones and zeros. I like the way Christopher put it. Reason is not a series of ones and zeros, which is what AI is at the end of the day. Reason is something else. It's derived from life, and it's derived from a certain mind which is conscious and alive and oriented towards survival. AI has no desire to survive. It has no desire. No, brains do not just process zeros and ones. There's something else that happens. Right? Life is not just zeros and ones. Not everything is electricity. In this case, it's biology. And biology is not physics. And biology is not zeros and ones. It's certainly not electronics. There's a different mechanism at work in a biological entity. All right, guys, thank you. I don't know if I'll see you tomorrow. Probably not. Probably see you Monday. I might do a show tomorrow. I'll let you know if I do, but probably see you Monday. Thank you to all the super chatters. Really, really appreciate it. Don't forget, please don't forget to become a Patreon supporter. Patreon.com, Yaron Brook Show. Become a monthly supporter. I really, really, really appreciate it. It's a way to make sure this show always exists and thrives and grows. Thank you, guys. I'll see you at the latest Monday. Bye.